Hey, this is Patrick Curtis, CEO and founder of Wall Street Oasis. Today we have a great chat with Jonah. Jonah joined us when he was a second year at Loughborough Uni. He ended up doing an exchange program with EDHEC and joining us and realized he really wanted to do finance. So he ended up getting his master's, but listen to specifically why he struck out earlier in his path with a BC internship and then how he continued to brand himself more in the finance realm with our equity research internship and a few other internships, as well as some student groups on campus. Enjoy. All right, Jonah, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, no problem.
So it'd be great if you could give the listeners kind of a short summary bio and where you're from.
Yeah, so it's kind of born in London. A lot of my family's kind of up from the Manchester area, but I kind of grew up abroad, leaving when I was six. Spent 10 years abroad, across South Africa, India, China. Came back in around 2018, finished kind of my studies there, and I ended up at Loughborough doing international business. Really enjoyed it. Really growing university. It's kind of really developing into, I think could be a leader in terms of business and finance in the future. So that's really exciting. But yeah, it's just, looking to kind of get into finance and kind of really feel like that's kind of the path for me and something that is always kind of been in my mind.
Awesome. Okay, so your decision to go to Loughborough, well, actually, let's go back further. Why were you traveling so much for your for 10 years before you even got to uni? Was it just
Yeah.
family, jobs type stuff, or?
Yeah, just my dad's job. Everybody always said, "Oh, was he a diplomat?" No, I think he worked for Ford, so that kind of took us all over the globe in kind of that manufacturing kind of perspective.
Very cool. Okay, so
Yeah.
in the auto industry, no kind of family in finance, or maybe not much.
No,
Okay.
no.
And so you kind of are going to Loughborough and you're thinking to yourself, I definitely want to do business. Why? Why did that interest you? Or I guess it was
Yeah,
more business, less
yeah.
finance. Like, had you kind of leaned toward finance at that point?
It was a weird choice for me actually in the moment because when I was still doing my sixth form, so I guess my high school equivalent,
Mhm.
I was doing economics, so I was kind of all in economics. I hadn't done business since I was about 16. And that kind of was the goal for me. It was a weird time in that, maybe I got some poor advice from some teachers around maybe what was expected of economics, and maybe I thought, oh, I'm not sure I want to go to university and really struggle. I kind of want to do something easier. But, that kind of international business kind of stuck out for me because I always wanted to do something abroad. I really enjoyed my time abroad. And then I thought, okay, well, it gives me a good balance between economics, finance, business, and all of that. And then it's got that international element, which I was looking for.
That's fair. And real quick,
Yeah.
what was your favorite place to live?
Tough question.
Yeah.
Yeah, tough
Or the
question.
best
I
food,
feel
fine, the
like,
best food. What was the best food?
oh, I think it was again tough question. I think for me it was between two. South Africa, I was a kid, so it
Yeah.
was a great place to kind of grow up. A lot of time in nature, amazing beaches, seeing some amazing places. But I really enjoyed Shanghai. I
Mhm.
just thought again, I was a little bit older, in my teens and kind of going around the city with your friends, massive city, just kind of,
That's fun.
really kind of exploring, that was really exciting.
That's cool. So okay, so you're getting to uni. You basically, at this point, do you know right out of the gate your international business? You're thinking I'm gonna do business.
Yeah. Yeah.
When does kind of finance or investment banking kind of come on the radar?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is when you're coming to uni, or what's?
Yeah. So it kind of started a little bit earlier. I was going into my first year of my sixth form, so I was about 17 at the time. And one of my friends, invited me to this like talk. There's a company over here called Invest In. I think they do like investment banking talks and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it was one at UCL, and that kind of opened my eyes up, it kind of piqued my interest. Especially when they started throwing around how much money they were making and the bonuses and all of that and that was just really kind of the first raw experience. I didn't know about the networking, the interview process, the amount of hours and all of that would go into it. But
Mhm.
that kind of piqued my interest. And yeah, then, with my course, knowing that I was going to have to do a placement, it was okay, well, it'd be great then to kind of do a placement, maybe in investment banking and just see really for that year if that was something that I wanted to do and then maybe continue that when I graduated.
Great. And so, talk to me a little bit about just the exchange program you're on now. So,
Yeah,
and then I assume in your first year, did you try doing any sort of spring weeks or anything like that? And let's start getting a little bit into the recruiting and the
yeah.
exchange of it. Because I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people would love to do an exchange, but I think a lot of people are
Yeah.
nervous about how it would impact their recruiting.
Yeah, I think, so kind of starting off with my story, I didn't really do spring weeks. I knew I had to do spring weeks, but I didn't. I ended up, maybe enjoying my first year too much, kind
Yeah.
of too much having fun, but yeah, then second year I kind of was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to start applying for placement, and I know that with the recruitment cycles now, everything is opening almost a year earlier now. It just keeps getting earlier.
Mhm.
So at that point, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start applying for placements. So I was applying for full year placements, and I wasn't really getting anywhere, And at that point, I kind of knew, yeah, I feel like I'm a bit behind the curve here. And I thought, well, I enjoy studying abroad. And there was two universities kind of that really stuck out to me on our exchange program, which was Bocconi
Mhm.
and EDHEC, and for me it was that if I'm going to go abroad, I want to do something then that's going to really help me and kind of really look good and you know expand my skills, so I applied to those. I got into EdTech, so I got to spend 3 months, 4 months in Nice, which, yeah, I can think of worse places to spend a couple of months studying.
It's beautiful
And
there.
it
Yeah,
was,
so beautiful.
yeah, it was really good, really good. I met a lot of really, really, really good people that, I still keep in contact with, and I learned a lot from them. But I think for me, it differentiated me as well. I was on a master's program there because they do masters there. So, there was that challenging element of it, but also then that access to kind of a wider alumni network, having the opportunity then to kind of, stand out compared to a lot of other students, get into contact with some of the EdHec alumni as well, is really exciting as well.
Yeah, so you think it was definitely worth it for you. You're happy you did it.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd recommend it. My sister's going away next year, but she kind of had that already planned out. So I kind of copied her in a way. But yeah, I definitely would advise people to go abroad.
Okay, so as you're approaching kind of recruiting for that second year, um, or how they say in the UK, the penultimate year, that the importance.
Yeah, I think, yeah, penultimate. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about just yeah, how that proceeded for you. And at this point, I think you had started to, I guess, understand that you were a little behind the
Yeah.
networking, the interview prep. Is this, I think it was what, 24, summer 24 or spring 24,
Yeah, it would have
one year?
been, yeah, I think it would have been for, yeah, basically starting in September, October 24. I think I guess when the placements would have started. No, you're right, actually. It
And you,
would
well,
have
you
started
joined us in
summer
July. You
24.
joined us in July.
Yeah,
Oh, you
yeah.
were
So
kind
I
of
think
even
it,
late. That was close, right? Because like
yeah,
it's coming up within a few months.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about like what were you doing before you came into WSO Academy, and then what did you do? Like, how did you hit the ground running once you joined us?
Yeah. So I think, I was doing a lot through my university career service, and they were kind of helping out a lot. I feel like they are they are good, but they're limited in a certain way, in that because of how many people that they kind of have to, try and cater for, they can't really specifically say, okay, well, we've got somebody over there that's doing investment banking, somebody over here that's doing consulting and etc. So it's
Yeah.
it's very general surface level advice, so I kind of took a lot of that advice, and I was struggling, I wasn't really networking. I was just kind of applying and hoping that maybe I'd get lucky. There's one in the spring with a VC fund in London that, and something as well that I advise, I got a rejection email from them, and I sent them an email back and I said, thank you for taking the time to look at my application. Is there any, advice, any support you could give me on improving my application? And then they came back and said, well, actually, we've not finished recruiting, and if you want to come back in a week, 2 weeks, we could maybe interview you. So that kind of initiative, I always kind of had that, I've always got to try and get some feedback.
Hmm.
And I went through that interview process, but I wasn't ready. I got to the final stage. They wanted me to do a basically like a pitch deck. I just wasn't clued up on the valuation methodologies for VC in terms of market sizing and stuff like that. It just wasn't good enough, and it was one of those that I knew it wasn't good enough. And that was it. It kind of went radio silent from there, and then going into the summer doing exams, and that's when I kind of came across. I think I was, always, you've got a massive presence on kind of Instagram, with all the social media stuff there.
Yeah.
So I kind of always knew about the academy and Wall Street Oasis, and then I joined and really kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to try and get as much as possible out of this because that's the only way to do it, really.
Yeah, so you're kind of joined us in the summer. So you had a few months in
Yeah,
before the recruiting kicked off. Tell me a little bit about kind of how you leverage first. Obviously, there's the CV review,
yeah,
but just did you jump right into the stories, like developing those? Did you feel like you
yeah,
had enough to work with
yeah,
exchange program? I assume you did. I assume you
yeah,
had some good stories.
yeah. I think. But yeah, I kind of started straight away with the CV because I thought for me, fundamentally, that's the most important part, in my opinion. I think, that's sometimes the only thing that somebody can perceive from you, if you're not meeting in person,
Yeah.
and I always had the confidence that, as soon as I got in front of somebody in an interview, I feel like I'm a confident enough person that I could have done well. And I had the track record of, as soon as I got to interview stages and I started to really progress. So for me, it's like, okay, well, the key to that is then the CV,
Yeah.
so I kind of really try to hone in on the CV, and the networking aspect as well was a big one for me because, I mentioned a bit about my university at Loughborough. It's an interesting kind of medium. It's, I guess, what most people would call it as a semi-target,
Yeah.
where I'm networking with some people and they said, oh yeah, Loughborough would be one of the universities that we target. But then other people said, oh, well, it's not a university that we would target. So
Mhm.
it's really one of those where it's like in the middle,
Yeah, it's hit or
but
miss. Hit or miss, some of
it's
it.
kind of developing, it's a strange one. And I always get annoyed because I was saying to one of my friends, when we were on the exchange program, you watch in 10 years, 15 years, it'll be one of the full targets and everybody won't understand how difficult it is to kind of to
Yeah.
break in, the experience that we did. But yeah,
So yeah, so tell me a little bit about just you're coming into the program, you're getting your stories reviewed.
yeah,
Did you feel like coming in, your story was already pretty good? Like, because you had started interviewing a little
yeah,
bit, like your why, your team A, the what how you communicated your behaviorals in the interviews. Did you
yeah,
feel like they were decent? Because it sounds like you were saying usually when you would get an interview, you'd progress pretty
yeah.
far. So like, were you already at a decent level, you feel like there?
I think I think the content was okay. I think it was nothing special, but
Yeah.
I think and some of the feedback I got from Annie is that, I can be really kind of natural in a conversation. I can really kind of think on my feet a little bit. I'm not as, robotic maybe as some other people. So I feel like that kind of personality bit kind of came through and kind of really helped,
Yeah.
and I know that I've got a really interesting story. One, I've kind of been a lot of places, experienced a lot of things, and I'm really grateful for that, and that kind of really allows me to speak on maybe, just stand out a little bit, just be a little bit unique, because I think for me, that's the main part. You've got to kind of stand out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, memorable, right? They're like, oh yeah, that's the guy who
Yeah.
traveled all around the world. His whole like, okay.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about just kind of how you progressed through the program. And so, you get your stories kind of reviewed, improved,
Yeah.
and then kind of we launch your networking, I assume right after that.
Yeah.
Tell me about that specifically, like in the UK, because sometimes I get pushback from the UK. I'm like, I know it's more
Yeah.
structured in the UK and Europe, but I promise networking still matters. So talk to me
Yeah.
about that and how you scale that up. Specifically, I'd love to hear some numbers, like how many
Yeah.
you spoke with.
Yeah. So I think it was an awkward time because I kind of started, before I went abroad, I was doing a lot. And then I kind of went abroad. And then the first month, 2 months, it was okay, well, there's so much going on here. I'm trying to fit stuff in,
Yeah.
but I really did kind of start trying to build into that networking aspect because, one thing that I think has been really rewarding for me from networking is that it's really kind of shaped what I want to do and where I want to end up. So, it's of course you kind of need it to maybe get into those first interview stages. But for me, it was one of those that it really kind of,
You're actually
showed me what
learning.
I actually wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah, you're actually learning and listening to people. It's a miracle for
Exactly.
networking.
Yeah.
The whole point
And I
of coffee
think,
chats.
and I was reaching out to think maybe about 20, 30 people a week, and maybe about 10%. So maybe I would 1, 2 conversations a week. I
Mhm.
think maybe I kind of still alter that a little bit. I thought maybe I was targeting maybe too many senior people,
Yeah.
which is great in terms of, if you're going to ask for a referral, it'll be a great referral.
Mhm.
But, also they're very knowledgeable and they've got a lot of, experience and kind of wisdom to kind of pass down. But it also kind of, like I said, I kind of went from really focusing on bulge bracket to then kind of really being quite interested in boutique,
Mhm.
because I kind of liked what people were saying in terms of the responsibility. You get more responsibility, you get to interact more with certain clients and investors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, kind of kicking off networking, it is all about numbers as well. But I do think, like you said, you've really got to try and listen, prepare some questions beforehand, that do a little bit of research and then just kind of enjoy it, be natural. Because I think one memorable one I had almost an hour-long conversation with somebody that was only meant to be 20 minutes. I think is an ED from JP Morgan on equity research,
Mhm.
and we just spoke about everything going on. And it was a really, informal and casual conversation. So, you kind of never know how these things are going to go, so you just got to be open to anything, I
Absolutely.
think.
And I think that skill of just being a natural conversationalist and allowing
Yeah.
not being afraid of the conversation shifting to different topics and being somewhat,
Yeah.
well versed and well read in terms of what's going on. So you're not afraid to
Yeah.
talk about different topics is actually really important. Talk to me a little bit about just, as you're, doing these calls as recruiting's kicking off. Tell me a little bit about like, so how many like one-on-one calls do you think you ended up doing kind of
Yeah.
at this point? Is it like 20? I mean, you said 1 to 2 a
Yeah.
week, but it's been going for a while now. So is it?
Yeah, I think probably 20 is around a good number, maybe about 20 people, and kind of all over loads of different companies. I think I spoke to JP Morgan, UBS, HSBC, Barclays,
Mhm.
some more boutique ones, Peel Hunt, just various different, banks, really kind of a broad spectrum because I really wanted to, cast my net wide. It was, I wasn't really bothered about where I ended up. I just wanted to end up somewhere.
And so
Um,
what happened? Let's talk about your out. Like what? Tell us the story. So you're the suspense is. So yeah, tell us what happened, and then yeah, what you're doing now.
yeah, so it kind of was really interesting. Surprisingly, I didn't really land anything from my networking thing, but I'm at Opus now, the Opus Group, which I'm really, really, really enjoying my time here. It's about 4 weeks in now, and it's a boutique investment bank based out of the US. And they're kind of really global. They're kind of growing in Europe. They've got offices in London, New York, Miami, and they kind of specialize. They're very much like sector agnostic, so they kind of specialize in real estate, healthcare, tech. I feel like there's a few more that I'm missing, but yeah, and it's kind of middle market between 5 million, 250 million, capital raising, M&A, stuff like that. But what's really exciting about it for me is that I've got the opportunity kind of really early on to kind of talk to clients, talk to investors, which at this early stage is really something you've got to kind of take advantage of. Because again, going back to the networking, everybody I spoke to said, doesn't matter where where you get what you get, if it's paid, unpaid, just get experience, just kind of get into the kind of fold of things and just meet new people and be curious and ask questions. So, I'm at a really good place now and I'm really enjoying it. And it's kind of giving me that international focus. They kind of work across the Caribbean, Europe, Asia, Americas, it's really exciting.
It's cool. I mean, kind of perfect for your background, given how
Yeah.
international your background is. That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about just like, looking back, you're obviously now here, you've made a lot of progress. Looking back, would you have changed anything kind of coming into recruiting or any of that stuff?
Yeah.
Because I hear 20, it's actually on the lighter side from what I like to see.
Yes. Yes.
For our students, usually I like to see
Yes.
50 on the low end to 100 on the high end, kind of before
Yeah.
pre kicks off. Talk to me a little bit about just like looking back. Would you have changed it? Would you have done more calls? Because you do speak really well. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like if you had, I feel like, I mean, you obviously had a great outcome. It worked out, but like, I feel like
Yeah.
as a safety, you almost want to like go further and broader.
Yeah.
I think, you end up converting probably really well because you speak so well and are so
Yeah.
personable. But yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think of course I would start earlier. I think, you could always start earlier. I think I would maybe try and target some more junior people as well. I feel like sometimes I run into the trap of, okay, well, I'm going after a referral here. Who's going to give me a referral? It's going to be the senior people, right?
Yeah.
But don't kind of get too caught up on who you speak to, just kind of speak to as many people as possible. Because, one of the things I found out with my interviews, Annie was really giving me advice is that, you know, if you can give a specific example, you don't have to name someone specific, but if you just said an analyst in this sector, really said that this is the work culture to kind of support your points, if you're saying, oh yeah, you work really hard and that's why you're really good, but if you say you work really hard and that's why you're really good, that's what somebody told me at this specific that, it sounds a lot better. So
Mhm.
I think for me, yeah, networking is really, really important and almost the key, not just to kind of get to interviews, but when you're in interviews, it really, really does help you kind of stand out and kind of really, shine compared to a lot of other people because you can, speak to what people are seeing and what people are hearing.
Yeah, I just feel like it makes the answer so much more authentic, so
Yeah,
much more genuine around, you know, the fact that you've done the homework, you've spoken with people who've worked there or that
yeah,
previously worked there. Um, and I see you did a lot of work with Annie on your mocks and
yeah,
improved a lot, so that was good to see. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I guess, I think, well, first off, congrats. It's an awesome
yeah.
outcome.
Thank
I
you.
guess
Yeah.
in terms of anything else you want to share, obviously mock a lot because I see that's what you did to get better.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and then yeah, and then I guess I think what's really kind of telling about your background and story is also the branding that you have. Like, so you also joined something called what's called M&A Watch, is that right? Or
Yeah.
yeah, so do you want to tell the listeners about that and what that is?
Yeah. So I think that kind of, that's where I mean in terms of Loughborough is, really kind of developing the first experience when, we're going back to that second year where I was like, uh-oh, I need to get some more experience. There was the society called the Loughborough Student Managed Fund. There's student managed funds all across the UK, but this is a real money fund, so that's unique. But
Hmm.
it's also one of the largest. We had an alumni that kind of came in and she worked at City, I believe, for 30, 40 years. And she gave, I think, about £200,000 to the students to kind of start this fund to help fund underprivileged students, then kind of give them a scholarship then through university. And I kind of went in there as an analyst in the FIG sector, kind of quickly worked my way up to head of research, which was really exciting, got to, lead a team. But, I met a lot of really good, passionate people there. And M&A Watch is kind of a continuation of that. There's kind of a couple chapters around the UK, a lot of really big, international targets, LSE, UCL, those two, the big ones, I guess. And there's a chapter in Loughborough, one of the founders, he went to Loughborough, he's currently working in consulting, so he kind of started a chapter there. And yeah, it's kind of, retrospective reports on M&A transactions. One of the ones that I'm working on is BNP Paribas acquisition of Fortis. This is about 2008. Really, I thought it was really exciting because it was in that era of, the financial crash and just kind of seeing how things were just completely different over there, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's really unique and really kind of interesting from an academic perspective, and I think for me as well, I've reached a point where I'm really happy at my company, but I'm continuing to learn. I'm still kind of doing stuff with Chris at the equity research at Wall Street Oasis. I'm still continuing to do that. I'm still doing my stuff with M&A Watch, kind of writing that as well. And anytime I get the opportunity to kind of do some more courses on WSO, Python or LBOs or anything interesting like that, I kind of want that opportunity because you know for me
Have you done
it's
any boot camps yet?
yes, I did the VC boot camp. Yeah,
Okay,
I did it
cool.
really, really early on, and that was really enjoyable. And it was fun, but frustrating because kind of going back to that interview that I had with the VC last year, I was like, oh, if I did this before, I probably would have got that job. But everything happens for a reason, I believe.
Yeah.
So
You're
yeah, I
still
think for
very
me
early
that
in your career, so don't feel bad.
exactly, yeah, that's I think if there's one big piece of advice that I'd give, it's just kind of don't get comfortable,
Yeah.
kind of keep going, keep kind of learning. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm just trying to take in as much information as possible.
Love it. Well, Jonah, thanks so much for
Yeah.
taking the time to chat with us, and obviously stay
Yeah.
in touch to let us know how we can
Yes.
keep helping you on your journey.
Yeah, will do.
Awesome.